To my friend Charlie Kirk. Rest now, brother. We have to watch. And I'll see you in Valhalla.
Did you know I was personally dragged into the whistleblowing about the sexual abuse, trafficking of vulnerable women at the non-profit organization with a false accusation by the female central to my story? I had support from some famous people like...
One man told me about being beaten by the police and left permanently disabled because of a woman's false allegation.
Hello, it's October 2025. Now this video does tie into some of the topics that I've been talking about recently, and it has to do with conspiracy. And what some people may not know is that the term conspiracy theorist was dubbed after the John F. Kennedy, JFK, assassination. And the U.S. government, specifically a division of it, coined that phrase to vilify anyone questioning the official narrative. And we see that happening ever since, where anyone who questions any official narrative on any event is automatically called a conspiracy theorist. And remember about 10, 12 years ago, I talked about this. When you actually look at the word, or the words, sorry, conspiracy theorists, what it really means is someone who is conspiring, creating a theory to conspire against someone. They're conspiring and they're creating a theory to make something work. So the term itself doesn't even make any sense, but it's what people will default when someone is questioning, and it's trickled all the way into people's lives, where they will call someone a conspiracy theorist when they question anything, even, for example, in their own personal lives. It's the way to vilify. Now, there is a gentleman who had, as far as I know, coined the phrase conspiracy analyst, which makes more sense. And what it's really all about is people questioning, for example, anomalies in the events themselves or the narratives. Things are not making sense. People are confused. So people are questioning. Now, perhaps some of the times, many of the times, that these things can be explained, but there's not enough information to make a properly informed conclusion. Or perhaps there's something else going on, for example, a truth being hidden. Now, I've said over the many years, even in recent years, how not to be consumed by anything. That is key, because you're consumed by anything, any topic, whether it be trying to figure something out like a conspiracy analyst, or, for example, just pick a topic. It could even be, for example, love in your own personal life, or hate in your personal life. Not to be consumed by anything. Now, I'm going to segue for a moment here, because what we see happening in part of the population is that they're being consumed by hate while preaching no hate. That's a different topic, but they become consumed to the point now where, for example, they're cheering for the person being taken from life, or the fact that the person was taken from life. For example, we have the Charlie Kirk event and everything that's been transpiring after, which has a lot of questions, many questions, and some of these things are like absolutely bizarre. I never mentioned in previous videos, for example, like the movie with Nicolas Cage called Snake Eyes, how the main character was named Charlie Kirk, And basically, the person was like a political figure who was shot in the neck in the same place. And basically, when you look at the movie, it's just going over Charlie Kirk's life. And this movie, I believe, was in the late 1990s. What are the odds of something like that? Now, it's these types of things that have people going, what is going on? You take, for example, and I forget who it was, it was a politician who was saying something to the effect of, well, they were talking about Charlie Kirk and his passing. And the very last thing that they said with conviction is that they'll see them in Valhalla. Okay, now for those who don't know what Valhalla is, it has to do with a belief system from Northern Europe, and it's a place where the people who have left life go to and so forth. That's not the point. Not long before the alleged person who took Charlie Kirk from life, who's now saying they never did it, they're claiming to be a patsy, had a picture of themselves taken in front of their laptop, or sorry, computer, monitor, and the wallpaper of that had part of New Zealand in it with some islands. And apparently, there's either one of those islands or a private resort on one of those islands called Valhalla. Now, for people who are not tuned in to these kind of, we'll call them anomalies as a descriptive, they're thinking, yeah, so what? But people who are tuned in are asking questions like, what is this all about? This movie, Snake Eyes, this guy saying Valhalla. And this is what's triggering people. Now, when you become consumed by it, it can drive you literally insane, where now you become truly, legitimately insane because you're getting too wrapped up into it. Especially when you have echo chambers in, for example, social media groups, and they're just going one after another examples on any topic, and it's causing people to lose sight of reality, we'll say. They become consumed. And now they're seeing ghosts as a descriptive in everything. And questioning, why did that ant go over that leaf at that moment when that event happened? The ant is involved. Like, I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but I'm trying to make a point. What happens when you become consumed? But there's a lot of events since JFK that people have been questioning because of anomalies. Or, for example, if it's not anomalies, that there are residuals or artifacts that don't fit, for example, an official narrative. What can you do about it? Nothing. And you have to ask yourself, what is really the point of trying to conclude something, get to the truth? You're never going to get to the truth because there's never ever going to be enough information to know what that truth is. And really, especially when it comes to sharing 1,000 examples, and I said this in a fairly recent video, how many examples do you need of something, say for example corruption, before you're satisfied? 1, 2, 1,000 examples? This is people getting consumed. And when same thing applies to, for example, when we're talking about anomalies in events, how many examples do you need? Maybe a handful, until you're like, okay, you're positive there's something going on, and you move on. You shelf the idea, whatever it is, and you just move on, not to be consumed. But that's a trap, to get people consumed with something, perhaps making them very angry, stirring things up, and that's all part of psyops. Now, I've mentioned in a previous video how trauma is one of the elements that create a PSYOP. Now, if you want to know more about PSYOPs, I recommend looking up Chase Hughes. He's an expert on these things, and he himself has even said, despite him being an expert, he can be PSYOPed. So for any of you people thinking, oh, you're too smart, or you have some divine discernment, well, you're lying to yourself, and chances are you're more easily PSYOPed. Perhaps because your guard is down, whatever. So I just want to really touch base on something called conspiracy theorists, conspiracies, and conspiracy analysts, and really try to drive home the differences. There are those in the world, for example, with generational commitment and the monopoly on violence, who do conspire against, as a descriptive, the world. And there are people as in the commoner class, which is most, who are detecting, seeing anomalies and simply asking questions. And it's healthy to be skeptical and ask questions. Now, I'm going to finish off here. When we talk about skeptics, again, it's healthy and proper to be skeptical, because that way you're not just buying into the first thing that you hear. But as in anything else, it's very easy to be consumed by skepticism and simply dismiss everything. And again, we get into not being consumed by anything on any topic. So if you're somebody who, for example, is a conspiracy analyst, don't be consumed. Say, okay, be like that to a certain point and just let it go and shelf it. You don't need 1,000 examples every day bombarding you, because you will go insane. And as I said in videos, and I believe even in a short, how do you know when you are insane? When you stop asking yourself if you are. Things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Essentially a military operation, and which explains sort of all the things I was talking about earlier, like lockdowns and the very authoritarian responses. That's not typical public health stuff.
Yeah, this was all fundamentally a kind of martial law action. Mm-hmm. We fell into martial law in 2020.
Just remember, I was one man against many. Fighting a losing battle, but I still fought to the end.
That means press on. That means endure. That means God cannot fail, and you're not going to give up. That's not an option for a child of God. This means you are going to be remembered. Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people say, when is it going to get easier? When you die.